Welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. Today we have on again Bhagavan Das, who is kind enough to come and join us again while he's in New York with Amaji, who is here blessing people, hugging people, loving people in the entire New York area. He's been playing music with her and has joined her caravan for the past period of time as she's been traveling across the country. And so we're very pleased to have Bhagavan Das again with us. And you'll be seeing some shots from the concert that he's going to be doing here in New York during his stay. Also with us is Uma, who's also a yoga student and has been very close to Bhagavan Das for many years. Welcome, Uma, and Bhagavan Das. And we'll be speaking with both of them as the show goes on. So glad to have you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. I remember seeing the show recently that we did last time, and it was nothing short of inspiring.
Thank you.
Really gotta say that, yeah. The music that you were generating and the sounds, it was so peace generating, really. Really very enriching. Really, in a very fine way, sure. So maybe we can get into some of the things that we didn't have a chance to talk about last time. Since it's a nice opportunity to have you on the show, and
Thank you.
We don't often get this. One of the things is that one of the ways that you were known initially that excites people to know, and some people do already know, is that you introduced Baba Ram Das to his guru. How is it that you know him, and how is it that you knew his guru? What were the stories connected to that?
Well, I was living in Nepal at the time, and I woke up one morning and there was this Norwegian hippie in the room, and he said to me, "Richard Albert's here, and he's giving everyone 8 hits of LSD." And each. And I thought, well, I'm going to get my dhoti on. So I got dressed, and I simply follow my heart. I follow some inner compass that sort of tells me where to go. And I walked into town and went to a place called the Blue Tibetan, which is kind of a famous hangout place for world travelers and hippies and the local Tibetans and Nepalese. And a very casual place, very open. People would be sitting at tables, rolling joints and drinking tea and so forth. So I sat down at a table, ordered a cup of tea, and within a few minutes, this very gangly, tall American walked in with a bald head, very awkward. And I knew immediately who it was, followed by a very short Indian man and another American. And they went to the back and sat down at the table. Ram Das had his back to me, or Richard Albert at the time, and David Padwa. The Indian man, whose name is Harish Johari, who has written quite a few books on Tantra, and very, very good writer and artist. He kept looking at me and smiling. So I took a few more sips of my tea and got up and walked over and sat down next to Richard and started speaking with Harish. And the moment I sat down next to Richard, he got really uptight and started fumbling with his tape recorder and just really getting into kind of a really incredibly just playing and just really getting excited about his tape recorder. And so I continued talking with Harish, and we ended up having a really great connection. So they kind of packed up and walked out of the Blue Tibetan, and we were standing outside, and they invited me back to their hotel, which was, they were staying at this 5-star hotel in Kathmandu, which is quite unusual because it's a very medieval 7th century type of city. And the next thing I knew, I was on the 30th floor overlooking the swimming pool. And Ramdas, who was Richard at the time, decided that, we would all take LSD together. So I was given one tablet of white lightning that was made by Osley, and it was about 305 micrograms of pure LSD, and another hit of STP. And I knew nothing about these things or what was going to happen.
You had never taken LSD
I'd
before?
never taken LSD before, though I'd heard about it because I'd heard of Leary and Alpert because they were famous on the scene, and I'd read some articles in Time magazine and heard that that Leary had been fired, and both of them had been fired, I guess, from Harvard for giving LSD to undergraduates. So,
what year was this now?
This was 1968. And I think it was right after Millbrook. And Richard had been experimenting a lot with LSD, and they had come to the conclusion that it definitely opened the mystical doors of consciousness, but they didn't know what else to do with it. And so they had sort of, as a last-ditch effort, I think Richard had come to the East to give it to holy men and sadhus and see what, could come from it, and where it was going and where he was going. Mm-hmm. And he was 36 at the time, and I was 23. I'd been living in India doing sadhana for 3 years, and it turned into, well, the first thing that happened was I had to get out of the building. And so we got in the elevator and went down to the swimming pool. We sat on the edge of the swimming pool, and the swimming pool turned into the river, the Ganges, to me. And it ended up into it was 10 hours. It was basically a 10-hour trip of me staring at the sun for 10 hours. I got locked into the sun and followed the sun across the sky.
How many of there were there altogether?
There was just me and Richard. And David and Harish decided to trip up in their room on the balcony and overlooking us down there.
How could you describe what was going on inside you relative to having done sadhana for a couple of years?
All of my energy, everything just focused on the sun. It was like this eye that I couldn't take my eye off of. And I started going through the sun into a black hole. And it was the sun turned completely black. It was like an eclipse. It eclipsed. Mm-hmm. And it was just like a black hole of like black light. And I felt like God was behind the sun. Mm-hmm. And I went into God. I flew into it. And there was a point of where I realized that I didn't have to come back anymore. And so there was this great choice that I had to either come back or leave. Mm-hmm. And I stayed with that for a long time, not knowing, just not knowing, but knowing.
And so you and Richard at that time became quite bonded through that experience.
Right, we became quite bonded, and he was quite taken with me at that point.
Yeah.
But
were you able to have a conversation during the time?
No, I couldn't talk.
Primarily silent.
Yeah, it was all silent. I couldn't say anything. Mm-hmm. I was simply in this light of the sun. Mm-hmm.
And in that light, how would you, looking back, compare that kind of experience with the yogic practices and the like that you had been doing relative to your own development of consciousness?
Well, it was just like having it was like somebody giving me the keys to a Ferrari, basically, right? It was like, you touch it and it just goes. It's the point of having engaged in a lot of sadhana and being able to concentrate and focus my consciousness was, I think, important to it. Mm-hmm. Made a big difference for me in the trip.
Probably allowed you to go all the more
farther,
accelerated way. Yeah.
Yes, I think it really did. Mm-hmm. And I came back and the only thing I could say was Om. I mean, that was the sun says Om. From the center of the sun comes forth Om. And all I could say was Om. And I really got Om. I got that Om, it was all Om. It really was Om. So, at one point in the trip though, before I got into the sun, we were swimming around with each other in the pool like dolphins. We became dolphins. And it was really beautiful. And Richard has the hugest head I'd ever seen. His skull, his head is just huge. I've never seen anyone with such a big head. And he just looked like this, like from another planet.
Was that
an amazing being? He's an amazing being.
What is it that you have to say about him?
Well, he's just an incredible soul. I was very taken by his awareness and by his heartfulness and his devotion. He was very devoted to me. I mean, I was like everything to him. It felt like at that point. And I didn't know quite how to take his energy, because he was so,
well, in a sense,
out there.
You were representing to him what was going to be his next path.
Right, exactly.
So
I was what he had come there for.
Yeah.
He was experiencing what I was what it was that he had come there for.
You were also the American conduit, or the American expression.
Exactly.
So there was a language basis for communication and a cultural basis for relating. So
yeah,
isn't that something? So what was the next step? How did you finally bring him to Neem Karoli Baba?
Well, I was living with these two beautiful girls at the time in Nepal, and I was really having a great time with them, and it was really hard for me to leave. But they showed up at my house the next day. And I had to choose between these two girls and Richard. That was a really hard choice, because it was like Richard, the Land Rover, the LSD, right? Or these two beautiful young girls whom I was just having a great time with. So I ended up going with Richard. I thought it would just, I needed to move on, and right. And I couldn't really take the girls with me anyway, So I would leave them eventually it would be like another week or two. So I decided to go in the Land Rover, and then I ended up in this Land Rover with like all this stuff in it, And it was like all of a sudden I was in America. I mean, in the Land Rover with tapes and books and sleeping bags and socks and pots and pans and everything in it. Right, and I was living a very
professor comes prepared for India.
Yes, it had everything in it. First aid kits, the works. He was sort of collecting things along the way. It was like, but he was in a very desperate, depressed state when we met. I mean, he was definitely, I won't say suicidal, but definitely bordering on that. It was very extreme longing in him, and. I felt the sincerity of his energy and what he wanted, and so I did my best to share with him by just being with him, and we went on a pilgrimage for 3 months. At which point he would take LSD, and we would take LSD together, and I would just start doing japa and chanting the divine names of God and doing my mantra, and basically pulling inward. And he would sit in front of me and just look at me and just bliss out and just get very, very devotional with me, basically worshiping me, which was, it was fun for a while, and then it sort of became uncomfortable, and I realized that I was sort of playing the guru for 3 months, and realized that I couldn't go any farther with him. He was too much for me. It was just too much. So I knew that I would take him. I mean, if he thought I was far out, he should see where I come from. So I took him to my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, up in the mountains. But he fought me all the way. He didn't want to go, and there was a whole issue about the Land Rover and who owned it and so forth. And then we got to the feet of Neem Karoli Baba, at which point I gave him the car keys and said, the car is yours. And then Richard really freaked out and said, you can't give David's car away. And who is this old man in the blanket? And then I guess the rest is history.
Yeah.
He'd be here now, and
Sure.
and Ram Dass metamorphosed into Baba Ram Dass. And then he dropped the Baba and became Ram Dass.
Right.
So.
What a prelude.
What?
The whole story that you just said.
Yeah.
To his personal transformation.
Right.
I mean, it was sort of like you were preparing the soil
Right.
for this man and helping him with his transition
Right.
from America to India, which really represented an entire change of consciousness.
Right. Because I didn't really know I was doing that.
Right.
I was really enjoying his LSD. You see, he had this.
That's what's especially funny about the whole.
See, he had this bottle of LSD, and I really.
There was this bottle, you see.
Yeah, and I really wanted the bottle.
And you gave him the keys to the Land Rover.
Actually, it's funny too
For that
because
bottle.
he left India. When he left India, I got the bottle, so it was.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because that
So-
was the end of LSD for him?
Well, no, he just left the bottle with me, so I had about 50 trips in it
Yeah.
that I was able to enjoy in India,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah.
No,
Didn't,
I mean,
didn't the guru also take LSD? Like
he took like
an immense dosage?
he did. He took like 3 hits. We went to see Maharaji, which is what I call Neem Karoli Baba. Maharaji means great king, and in India, the sages and the saints are the great kings because they're beyond the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Where's the medicine?" And Richard thought that he meant, that he had a headache. And he thought, well, the old man has a headache, or he needs some vitamins. And so he looked really puzzled when he said, "Where's the medicine?" But I knew that he meant, the medicine, the LSD. So he came and he got the LSD, and he gave him 1 hit, and he said, "More, give me more." And then he gave him 2, and then he ended up putting 3 of them in his hand, right?
As in 3 more? Or
He took 3 hits.
altogether?
He took 3 hits, which would be 915 micrograms of pure LSD, which is like, absolute beyond like melt through the floor, right?
Meltdown.
Meltdown
That would be a lot
completely.
for Terence McKenna.
It's massive for anybody,
Yes.
Absolute beyond. Because 1 was complete, absolute ego loss, and 3 beyond. And I remember Richard like looking in disbelief at Neem Karoli Baba's hand, and he saw that, so he held his hand out really close to him, and then he went like this, really close, he went like that, and ate.
Let's make a point.
Yes, and then he sat there, and nothing happened. He just carried on like it was a normal day, and that's what happened. Nothing happened.
And you stayed in India at that point?
I stayed in India after he left as Ram Dass. He came back then as Baba Ram Dass with the mission to write this book, From Bindu to Ojis, which later became Be Here Now. Mm-hmm. And went around the country lecturing and talking and being Baba Ram Dass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, as you said, the rest was history.
Yeah.
So it went, yeah.
Right.
So, but for you, what
Uh-huh.
happened for you at that point?
At that point, I was incredibly, I was just like so relieved to get rid of him. That he left, and I could go back to like a more simple life.
Simplicity.
Yeah, it was like, God, I'm just so
Yeah.
glad I just like not in America, I was very anti-American when I was in India and traveling. I was kind of embarrassed to be an American.
Well, you had left originally, as I recall, on the day that JFK was shot. Is that
A month later.
A month later.
Yes, right after he was shot.
So that probably accounted for some of your own sentiments.
Right.
Of
I was
what kind of country is this where, the CIA, the government itself is killing off its own president? Or not that that was so well known at that time, but anyone could have possibly inferred some wrongdoing or misconduct.
Right. So
you had those feelings. So Richard, being there as he was bringing that kind of waft back to
it was
you.
too much America for me. It's like I had my dose of America, and I wanted to, use the LSD for my own sadhana, which I did. Was able to,
And so then you returned to doing something.
I returned back into retreat. I went back into being a hermit, and right.
And how long did you stay with that?
For 4 more years. That was generally my trend. Was I would go and I would be complete recluse hermit, and I would live like 4 or 5 months in total solitude and isolation. And then I would leave the mountains and just, have fun. I'd have a woman or 2 women or 3 women and enjoy and eat and, be amongst people. And then I would do that for a month or so, or a couple of months, and then I would go back into seclusion for another 4 or 5 months. I was kind of testing my realization in the bombardment of the senses, of the sense pleasures. Enjoying.
Did you pass the test?
Yeah. I feel very positive about existence. And, the whole idea of renouncing, and who is it that's renouncing, and what are we renouncing, right? And but it is important I feel, to truly get a focus of inner directed energy in a situation of solitude, so that you can get very deep and go through the fears of of being alone, and of really confronting your own stuff. It's good to feel the feelings that solitude brings up. And I think also basically a nature mystic, and I feel a deep communion with nature. And my path is worshiping God as the Divine Mother. So nature is mother.
Right.
So I'm very at home in a natural setting. I like sleeping outside under a tree all night, and I like being around snakes and wild animals, and I like that, and birds, all that stuff. It's like really, I love being barefoot.
So would you go between being in solitude, being, with women and eating and all of that, and then you'd also go and visit your guru as well?
Oh, I was with him all the time.
Oh, you were with him?
Yeah. I would always come in and be with him, and then leave and come in and be with him. My relationship with him turned from being with him. I was with him every day for 6 months when I first met him, and then.
How is it that you first met him?
How did I first meet him? I was living with a Swami in
there's so many gurus.
Yeah. I was living
Really?
I was living with a Swami, and I had been practicing sadhana for 6 months with him. And he decided to go on a pilgrimage and took me to Neem Karoli Baba's feet, because he had heard of Neem Karoli Baba and wanted to have his darshan, which means seeing in Hindu philosophy. But it means seeing, like deep seeing.
Right.
Like having a vision. By seeing, you actually see.
So he wanted to see him.
He wanted to see him, and I was tag
and
along.
You were going along. Right.
Yeah. I was tag along.
And something obviously happened for you as well.
The moment I saw him,
Yeah.
and everything fell away for me. Yeah. It was love at first sight.
Huh.
And it really is love. I mean, it really is just love. It is love, and we are love. And letting ourselves have it is what's so profoundly simple.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Do you distinguish, Bhagavan Das, between that description of love that you felt for your guru and that you feel for a woman, let's say?
It is the
or
same.
A friend?
It is the same.
It is the same.
Yeah. You've got to get into a relationship with God that's erotic. You've got to engage desire. You've got to get deep into the core of your desire, because we go where our desire is.
And our attention
follows the desire, exactly, and the will follows the desire.
Of course.
So it's got to become very juicy and real, the spiritual path.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're not going to do it. I long to worship. I long to, do puja and be in that state.
Sure.
Because there's a tremendous amount of energy there and fulfillment. And it's like being with your love. So for me, being with the Divine Mother is being with my lover. And I love being with her and talking to her and hanging out with her and feeding her, getting fed by her, making love with her,
well, it's a really
talking to her.
Point that you make in your life is really exemplifying this when you were talking about your relationship with nature and the relationship of nature to the Divine Mother, which is really one and the same, because we have so many very kind of primitive and archaic notions of being religious as being austere and full of self-denial.
Well, I had that.
So
I had that feeling. I mean, that's a classical
we were
feeling.
Raised with that feeling.
Right.
That was kind of habituated. That was conditioned at birth. So to be religious is to be kind of this idea of piety, which is to be separate from the senses, outside of, beyond the senses, and the senses were in a certain way considered bad. They were condemned.
Right.
When in fact the point that you're making to just kind of orchestrate it together is that nature, the Divine Mother, is incredibly sexy, incredibly sexual, incredibly voluptuous, and, as you said, incredibly erotic. So to draw distinctions between one's spiritual life and one's sensual life and connection with nature is really very artificial. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
I mean, it's just...
Well, I mean,
so people weave these things together, they start to really have fun and connect to the juice of life.
Right. That's what I was seeing.
Yeah.
That, the ascetic path just, wasn't the complete path for me. I needed to engage with the world.
Sure.
And
there's a time and a place. I mean, there's a time to explore that as another neat alternative,
Right.
For periods of time, I'd say.
Yeah.
But what brought you back to America after all that you had felt about...
My visa ran out in India, and I couldn't get it renewed.
There we have it. I knew it was a deep cosmic reason.
Did not want to come back to America. America was the last place that I wanted to come back to.
Yeah.
I was extremely happy living in the 7th century in India.
So when did you come back? When did you...
71.
71?
Yeah, and I couldn't get it renewed. I'd been living in India 6 years. And so basically, I mean, my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, sent me back to America. I mean, by not helping me with my visa. And just as I came back to America, hundreds of Westerners came to India to be with him. So in a way, it was a perfect timing, because it would have been very hard for me.
Yeah.
As it was when I was there when about 15 of them came. So
you already began to see the transition.
Right. Yeah, and it was difficult for me coming back to the West.
Yeah.
It was it was much harder for me to... The culture shock was deeper coming back to New York City than it was being in India.
Initially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had to deal with this, the fame trip was really hard on me. Having so much energy on me, and everybody knows you, but they don't really know you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
you know.
What they're really seeing is their projections of you.
Right.
Who they think you are.
Right.
And all, yeah. So what was that like, and what kind of response were you getting from folks?
I was just trying to hide out and duck them, basically. And didn't know quite what to do.
It's funny because Ram Dass had an entire, of course he didn't spend the time in India that you did, and also went there for, in a sort of different incentive in the beginning. But I mean, he took that energy completely and wrote the book and went out to lecture and went to India to lecture. I mean, he became, a world-known guru as such.
Right.
And you who had been there really over time, spending a lot of time in solitude, etc., something that he never did, had a whole different kind of reaction in returning.
Right.
You decided not to really go that route in the same kind of way.
No, I didn't want to go commercial and, set up a scene in an ashram, and I wanted
institution.
I wanted to see what happened, and I basically just kind of stayed in the sidelines and watched all the different gurus go down. Watched all the fallen angels dive.
The parade of gurus.
They all went down.
Yes, right.
And I felt, I feel the Divine Mother saved me. I really do. So I basically hid out in the world for 15 years.
God. Yeah.
And raised a family, and was able to somehow find the divine in ordinary life, which is, I think, really important.
Yeah. And did you maintain your practice?
I did up to a point, and then the money pressures got so much that I couldn't even do anything, but I was working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep making the money that I needed to keep my scene going.
That's the American way.
Yeah.
That really crystallizes the differences, the contrast, the heavy contrast between, one of the ways between life in India, where you have all the time for your own inner life, virtually, because you eat this and you wear that, and that's pretty much the end of that. And the rest of the time is spent in inner cultivation. And here, it's just the opposite, where you are just working like a dog, just to, pay the rent and be involved in the whole material world.
Right.
And there's almost no time for one's inner life.
Right.
So we're bankrupt in one way, and they've been, you could say, if you want to look at it that way, in another. But what ultimately, when we pass on, are we thinking about? It's not our Mercedes Benz. It's who we've been as people.
It's who you've loved.
Who we've loved.
It's what love is in your life.
Yeah.
It's like your children, your family, your people you've loved.
Yeah.
So it comes back to love.
Yes, it does.
It comes back to real love, and we're here to learn how to love. That's what, for me, the purpose of life is.
And so from all the teachings that you have heard and being with your guru, that's the message that you feel most deeply than anything.
Love is a very specific feeling. It is not an abstract conceptual ideal. It's very specific, love. And it's very profound. And it's a fulfillment of the spiritual quest. That's what I feel.
And
it really is. It's as simple as that. It's love and surrender.
What would you say to the audience that's listening that would want to know something more about the cultivation of that love? Because let's be honest, we're living in a world, like we were just describing, a material world, and New York City of all places. This is intensely materialistic.
Right.
And God knows there are lots of other vibrations in this city, and we all thank God over and again for those.
Right.
But there's a tremendous amount of pressure on people to produce on certain material levels.
Right.
And we're living in a world with lots of chaos and a lot of confusion, and a lot of anger, and a lot of violence. So amidst this situation, how does one who is got a feeling for the spiritual inside him or herself relate genuinely and honestly and realistically to this world?
Well, I feel that the solution is having a daily spiritual practice. And that has to be defined by everyone themselves. I mean, we're all on our own path, and we have to find the way ourselves. There is no way, there is only the way. And my experience of the only way is connecting with the breath and finding a name of the divine that you have a deep emotional connection with, and putting the name with the breath, and that gently brings you back to the heart, out of the mind mesh of your head, and which is where all of the anxiety and the neurotic speed goes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're slowing down with the breath and the word. You can do it on the subway. I mean, what's happening to me now is I'm just feeling a lot of love for the world. And it's not like I'm trying to love the world. But, you know...
What you really mean is you love life.
I love life, I love people.
And you love people.
I love people, and it's all...
And
we're all in it.
The Divine Mother.
And the Divine Mother is
Nature.
Existence. And nature is as much the subway as the tree.
So having that feeling, Bhagavan Das, how do you commune with the subway?
You simply worship everyone as God. Everyone who walks in the door of the train is God. And you simply sit there and you look at them as God. And you feel, wow, it's wonderful being here. This is so incredible. I get to be in this divine mansion with all of these deities. And everyone is so beautiful. I mean, this is what I do. That's where I want to be. You know, it's heaven or hell. Moment to moment, it's your choice.
Right. And that can work for you too. Add 2 teaspoons of water. So, I want to aim towards something. I want to take this, all that you said, and I want to bring it, in a sense, to the level of dealing with some of the situations. See, when people get on a subway these days, they're probably on their way to work or to a movie or to a theater or something. Or they've got some kind of destination, and they're not really usually looking to cause trouble and all of this stuff. They're just going on their merry way, and it might be friendly, it might be whatever. And so, in a sense, it's easy. It's not that difficult to sit and gaze and enjoy their beauty and enjoy, you know, maybe some humorous characteristics or whatever. You just have a gas at the whole thing.
Right.
Now, when you look at some of, and there are so many real atrocities taking place right under our noses in this city, where people are women are being raped, where people are being violated in many, many different ways, where we live within the connected to a government that is perpetrating terrorist acts across the world in the name of peace, liberty, national security, all sorts of very fancy names.
Right.
I'm voicing something that I myself find very, very challenging, which is to maintain a sense of peace and love in my heart, and at the same time deal in a very real, practical way. I call it spiritual activism. You know, it's taking the real situation of my love for people, my commitment to humanity and to Mother Earth, and doing something. There's something, in fact, I believe there really is something to do. There's certainly someone to be. I think we've established that. And having established that, there's something to do. And I'd like to hear, based on your experience, maybe a few things that might people who feel this intense compassion for others and connection to starving children and children who are making the clothes that most Americans wear on their back in Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador, who are being paid pennies a day. You know, that doesn't make you feel good, thinking that the places where you go shopping, this is you're involved somehow in child exploitation, and on it goes. I mean, I don't have to go into such great details, but you I think have a gist. How do we, with those with that feeling of compassion, relate to and deal with these kinds of issues?
One breath at a time. That's how you deal with it. One breath at a time. You're dealing with, we are here and we have to be with ourselves first and bring about a peaceful solution within our own hearts.
Very true.
And then, therefore, what then comes forth from you, you're generating that vibration. So in a way, my answer is, everyone has to find their own answer for you. My answer for me is not your answer for you. My way is to become, I'm like a prayer wheel. I'm constantly praying for them. I'm, keeping that energy going inside of me. And I'm seeing the drama unfolding. And you can either be engaged in the drama and find out ways that you can do something, but there's no end to what you can do. So we house the homeless, or we help 25,000, but there's 25 million. So either you're going to go into endless frustration, or you're going to just take it one breath at a time. And it's a smile on the street, and it's really connecting with someone who's hurting in that moment, and it's reaching an arm out and hugging someone for real, or giving someone $10 at a moment, if that's what they need, or, it feels like that's happening at that moment. In other words, you just got to take it moment to moment. And you can live in as much integrity and truthfulness that you have, evolved to in your own being.
Right.
You've got to bring it home, I think. Instead of going out there, we're always just going out there to save the world. And we are the world, so it's our world we need to save.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's not going to, all of this is going to keep going on. It's always been going on.
I know.
And we know about it now because of all of the information that we have, and we get so much information, we're just bombarded by it.
That's right.
But the level of negativity is just beyond. And
True.
the way to deal with it is to get an inner directed focus and then come out of that inner place into the outer activity, and you are basically elevating your soul so that wherever you go, you can carry that vibration with you. So if I'm emanating those vibrations, when I'm on the subway, the people around me are feeling that vibration.
That's right.
They don't even know they're feeling it, but they're feeling love. They're feeling me being in love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See?
And it's always nice to
You see what I'm
somebody
saying?
who's in love.
Exactly. And it feels really good, And so it's basically, that's the way to do it.
Sure.
Is to become a broadcasting station of
A love station.
A love station of love.
Yeah.
And there's the comfort and there's the solution. And all of the stuff that you talk about all comes from my way of feeling from all head tripping, from everyone being in an anxious state of head tripping and thinking too much. We're a mental culture. Everything's too mental. Everyone's into computers, and they're all into media and mental activity. There's not enough feeling tone. So let's come back to feeling. What does it feel like? You know how to go if you can go with your feeling and trust your intuition. That's why the mother way, I feel, is the way. Because the female is the feeling tone. And it's intuition, and that's the heart. And we don't have to know, because you know. You know where to go, and you know what to do in each moment. Moment to moment to moment. You get to choose. Do you want to be in heaven, or do you want to be in hell? And if you don't like where you are, breathe the name of God that you love. Ma, Ma, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. Jesus, Jesus. Love. Whatever it is, you just got to get into it in an emotional, deep, tonal way so that it resounds in your soul, in your bones.
Right.
And you sing your bones. You go that. I'm a musician and a singer, so that's the way I do it. But you may be a cook, and you may be giving the food and putting the love in the food, and you're working with television and communicating that with people. So you see, we're all playing a different role.
Absolutely.
And the thing is to find your own unique voice and sound the tone of your own voice.
Right.
Not
Your own being.
Don't do someone else's trip.
Sure.
Do you. Find out what unique place that you are in the drama, in the play. What mask are you going to wear? It's all a mask. Everyone is God pretending they're not God. That's what I see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as everyone is God, when when there's pain somewhere in the universe, or let's just say on the planet, that pain, in a sense, belongs to us all too, as does the joy.
Right.
And the joy I find quite easy to experience.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a natural. It's when you learn that there are children that are hungry, and you can feel that in the pit of your own stomach, that it urges us to action. I mean, our bodies are designed for action, and some of the actions you've been speaking about very, very eloquently of lining oneself up and being with the breath, that's action.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
action.
We can't stop acting.
No, we can't.
That's
stop
what it
acting,
is.
right?
And existence
It's
has...
an act.
Yeah, it's an act, and so it's just getting good at the act.
And then wherever we feel moved, connected to that. And I think that's a very important point for people to hear, that not to run off half-cocked on some kind of mental level,
Right.
frustrated and anxious and even eager. But it's not aligned, it's not connected. If we were to actually take a snapshot, we'd probably find that people were holding their breath for quite long periods of time who are in that, that
Yes.
monkey mind state.
Exactly.
And to really be effective, in other words,
Right.
even politically, is
Right.
to come back to the simplicity and beauty of one's own heart space, really,
Right.
and to be living and connected to that.
Very well.
Uma, do you have something to add to that? To what we've been sharing here?
Well, I was
Especially as a woman and a different kind of expression of the Divine Mother.
right. Well, with the children and the children starving and whatever you're feeling for these, maybe you would fast for them in your own being, instead of like trying to go outwards and do something out here in your own sense. You would fast for them or chant for them or pray for whatever cause you were
Right. You could also
that was affecting you.
You could also feed them, couldn't you? I mean, if you were hungry,
Yeah.
what
Yeah. Well, if you
you
saw
would
that.
want to be fed, I guess, on all levels. But you would
Right,
surely
yeah.
want food.
Yeah, of
Let's
course.
be real about
Oh,
it.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. We all want fed.
Yeah.
And Divine Mother will feed us all also. Her name fills us. And if the children could hear of her name,
Yeah.
right?
What accounts for the blocks, Bhagavan Das, between us and just the underlying, very real connection? I mean, you had to go to India to reconnect to the preciousness of life.
Right.
You spent many years there in many different kinds of contexts. What is it about that human beings come here and we're all God, and then poof,
Well, we forget.
It's like we're not God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We forget.
What's
amnesia.
the nature of the forgetting?
Just the nature of existence, of the senses being pulled outward into activity, and us thinking that it's all out here. And that when we get it out here, it's going to fix us. If we get more stuff, if we get the right relationship,
Yeah.
if we can just make enough money so we can feed the poor. And, God does come to the hungry in food, then you feel called to be in that place. You can feed people right here in New York. You can find out where they need it. You can take your money, you can take your time, and you can go out and engage in it and do it. But it's got to come from a deeper place than the mental. That's the thing. I mean, India is just, the spirituality of India is humanity. That's all. You get to really deal with real humanity and see the way people treat each other. And India, it's not an individualistic culture like the West is. It's not a me, me, me culture. People do things for the family, and you do things for greater togetherness.
Yeah.
Not like my thing.
Yeah.
It's
in
not so
service
much
of the collective.
exactly. It's a deeper level of being, and that's what I got from it. You know.
Yeah. God, I feel like we should learn so much from that model.
Well, it's very our
The
own.
Chinese and the Japanese also have it too. It tends to be an Asian kind of value.
Right.
Just a whole different sense of self. It's a
Right.
collective self.
Right.
family, group, community. And
It's also caring about other people and
Yeah.
really being with other people. I mean, it's like, and stop, being so much indulgence about yourself and who you are and what you're doing.
yeah.
And it gets really tiring,
Yeah.
this self-indulgence with ourselves.
That's right.
Because if you think about it, when you're really happiest, you're out of yourself. You've had a few drinks, you're at a party, you're having fun, you're laughing, you're at the beach, you're whatever, right? You're out of yourself. You're happy. When you're in yourself and thinking about your problems and your life and this and that, the self-obsession
That's right. It's a repeat performance.
It's a lot of suffering in it.
Yeah.
More suffering than there is being out of it. So,
Oh, yeah.
so that's another way. Is simply,
Sure.
getting out of it, and of course, you get out of it by getting into it. In the sense of you need to go deeper into a daily spiritual practice
Mm-hmm.
to align yourself with a higher vibration
Mm-hmm.
than the mental vibration.
Sure. It's also a way of cleaning out
Mm-hmm.
the obsessions by connecting to them. 'Cause,
Right.
we tend to kind of build sometimes on top of an
Oh, it's that.
underlying neurosis or something not at home, a feeling of a lack of comfort. So
Right.
you can't build a house without a foundation.
Right.
And sometimes people get involved in the spiritual practices without really dealing with some of the stuff that's just preoccupying them
Right.
in a very practical way, and they just can't put their
Right.
attention to it. It just doesn't work. It's
Right.
like trying to plant a seed in soil that's completely dry without any water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I find the music and chanting is the best way to begin to engage in a spiritual path, because there's so much noise and energy going on that you chant, purify the atmosphere with the music and sound.
Yeah.
And with the names of the Divine Mother, and that leads you into concentration. Concentration will lead you into meditation. You can't just sit and meditate, because you can't.
Right.
And then you get frustrated and you don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But if you clap your hands and you sing and you get into sound, it will lead to that.
Yeah.
So it's good for the time we live in, because we live in a very noisy, turbulent times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're in the country, and then, it's very quiet and peaceful.
Sure.
But that's what you need to meditate, is that peacefulness.
You've been traveling around with Amaji, talking
Mm-hmm.
about bringing some life and vitality
Yes.
to life in the world. What's that been like? And what's that
Incredible.
experience?
It's Amaji is the Divine Mother herself.
Mm-hmm.
She is the universe. She
Mhm.
is all of creation in the very heart of love,
Huh.
of completely compassionate, giving love. And she is my path. I worship her. I worship what she is, and that giving of love to everyone in an unconditional way, of really, really being there for people. You see, it only takes...
Such a fine example of being outside of oneself.
Exactly. It only takes...
Paying attention.
Yeah. It only takes showing up truly, sincerely, in the moment, completely, for it to activate the love. But we're so conditioned to be halfway with everything. We don't fully engage in our awareness and touch the moment completely. You see? That's the whole be here now trip.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to be here now and to be in the moment. And it gets to be, it's a very rarefied atmosphere to be around Amaji. And it's love. It is just truly love. That a mother, who she is, truly the mother, not a mother, and we're all her children. And there's not a question that we're not her children. So you become her child. So you experience being a child of God in that moment. And you feel the love, and she permeates the whole atmosphere of the room that she is in. She turns a hall into a temple. So see, it's transmuting, turning a subway car into a temple. By your acknowledgement of the situation as being divine. It's loving existence with all the pain, sorrow, hardships, good times, everything in it.
Yeah.
You know? So again, surrender and love.
Sure.
It comes down to that.
And music.
Well, yes. I mean, that's, for me, yes. I love the music.
I know.
And
We
I love
we
being...
love that you love music.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Alma's music, Alma sings, and she loves people.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
my
her
path.
music.
And that's my path, is
Yeah.
loving people and singing. And she's teaching me how to love people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm learning. I'm learning how to
Isn't
love.
it fabulous that you've been on this path for so long?
I'm just
and
learning how to
you're
love.
just learning how to love.
After 51 years, I'm just learning. So you have to be patient with yourself.
There is hope, folks.
Yes.
There is hope.
Patience.
Yeah.
It's every day is a new day. Every moment's a new moment. And there's none of this once and for allness. I think we need to get rid of that concept. Everything is fluid, everything is new.
Yes.
And if you blew it one moment, there's another moment that you can get it again. So you forget, you remember. You forget, you remember. That's all. Surround yourself with things that keep you remembering. People, places, music, creating an environment that keeps you awakened in the heart.
Yeah. God, that's so important.
Yeah.
We do live, it seems like a function of the mind to fixate on things.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh my God, I did it this way, so that means I won't be able to do it that way. I fell off the horse, never going to be able to get back on.
Mm-hmm.
And we live falling. We spend most of our time falling. If we could remember that, we could just hop on, as you say, at any moment.
Every moment, it's a new moment.
Exactly.
And so an attitude of appreciation is really important. To be grateful and thankful for our human life, the opportunity to be here, to learn to love, being grateful for our friends, for our parents.
That's right.
And getting really real with all that is very, very important.
Well, I hate to say that we're out of time. And I want to take this moment to express my appreciation for you.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Uma, as well. Really, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your stories and your words of wisdom. It's really very special. So,
okay, we will.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. And I want to thank you all again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.